welcome back to Facebook Live. I guess we're not just on Facebook this time, but also YouTube here at Biktrix. As usual, I'm Shannon, and with me today I have a special guest because we're going to be talking about all things batteries. So let me introduce to you Eddie. Hi Eddie.
Hi Shannon.
Welcome to our live. So do you want to just give the folks a little rundown about who you are and what you do here?
Alright, thanks. Hello guys, my name is Eddie and I'm the customer experience manager in this company. Apparently when I joined this company I was the battery technician for a few months before I moved to the customer support team, and then from there on I just grew up to this post. But yeah, we have been planning about doing some live sessions and podcast style sessions to be about that, and then we came up with this plan of having a battery questionnaire and question answer session, and I believe this is the perfect setting for that. So let's go ahead. What's up?
Yeah,
Shannon?
so we get a lot of questions, different questions about batteries from folks who are looking to buy their bike, who've already bought their bike, want to upgrade a battery. So we're just going to go over some of that basic stuff that's great to know about batteries, how to take care of them, and how to get the best life out of them once you have them. So one that we get asked the most, I would say, is do you plug in the charger to the wall or the battery first?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, this question has been asked several times now, and before I answer that, I would like to tell all of our viewers and customers that we have something known as battery care instructions on our support page. Always follow that page because that gets updated every few months, because based on the instructions and feedback from our manufacturer, we have to make certain changes to that. But yeah, to answer your question, you have to plug in your charger to the wall first before you plug it to the battery, because you want the charger output to have an equivalent balance with your charging port on the battery. Otherwise your charging port will have a spark and it might burn the contacts, and that's why you need to plug in always into the wall first.
Yes, and I've actually seen that happen. We've seen photos of folks who maybe plugged it into one end before the wall and have burnt out the little socket where the pin goes in, and that's not a fun time and can be quite dangerous. So let's make sure we're following those guidelines. Speaking of charging, another thing we get asked a lot is, should I charge it after every ride? Should I make sure it's all the way depleted or dead first, or can I just top it off?
Yeah, a good question again, and I believe that this question stems from the previous gen batteries. So for example, the previous gen batteries had this something called as the memory effect, but apparently due to advancements in the battery technology, the new generation of lithium-ion batteries that are being used in the automotive battery packs that we use, that the grade A type of cells that they are called, they do not have this memory effect now. So it's advisable to charge up your battery as soon as possible, because you see, the lithium-ion batteries, they are designed in a different way, and they don't just behave like your conventional gas-powered vehicle or engine or car, because the charge depletes as you lose your voltage on the battery. So over the second half of your charge levels, you will notice a considerable drop in your power output, which is normal because this is the technology that's on our hands right now. But to see that, like, you have to keep your battery charged as much as possible, because the top 20% of your battery is where the maximum juice is. So for example, the charge level from 80 to 100%, that's the top 20 bracket that contains the maximum juice on your battery, and that gives you the best results. So yeah, as soon as possible, charge it up. But one piece of advice, after you have come back from a demanding ride, say for example, you were riding for 50, 60 miles maybe, and you have come out after the ride, and the ride was in a hot weather and stuff like that, your battery pack might have become warm because of that. So it's advisable to let it cool down for a few minutes, let it come down to the room temperature before you start to charge it up. But yeah, as soon as you get a chance, please plug it into your charger and fill it up there.
Excellent. And how long should I put it on the charger for?
Yeah, good question again. As soon as you plug in your charger, you would notice the light on your charger would turn red from green. That indicates that the charger has started to charge your battery. And then you have to wait for the light to turn green again. So once your charger stops charging, it will go back to the green light, and that's when you could unplug it.
Great.
Again, one piece of advice. A lot of customers have asked this before. Should I just leave the charger overnight connected to my battery because I'm just going to bed? You can technically, but it's not advisable. You can do it maybe once in a while, but it's not advisable because the thing is that keeping any electronics connected for a prolonged period of time and unattended is not a safe practice. So please don't do it unless it's absolutely necessary.
Safety is key.
Absolutely.
We want to, maximize the life of our batteries, but also our own by not burning our houses down by accidentally
Totally.
leaving things charging when we shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Excellent. So speaking of chargers and ports, I know we have a few different kinds of chargers and a few different kinds of batteries. So let's say, I've got one of these with my Ultra Duo and I lost my charger. I need to order a new one. Is there anything I need to keep in mind when I'm ordering a new charger from Biktrix?
Absolutely. So if you'll see we have a lot of models of our batteries, and because of that there are certain combinations that exist with us. Primarily, each battery will have a different unique port on it. So for example, the charge port on this battery is a single port charging port. And if you are planning to order a charger only, then you need to send a picture of your charging port on the battery, because we have got something of this type. I'll just bring it up to you. So essentially we have got like 3 different types of charging pins. One is the single pin that goes onto these kind of batteries. One is a 3-pin that goes onto certain other type of batteries, and one is what is called as the 3PY, because there's a 3-pin Y type of connector on it. So essentially when you're planning to place an order for just the charger, make sure that you send a picture of the charging port on your battery. Another piece of advice from there, that's a good question. Sometimes people buy batteries on different timelines. So for example, the customer John bought a battery in January, and then he decided to buy another battery later on, a few months later. But by the time he comes back to us to buy another battery, the battery might have a different port on it because of the new stock or different stock. If you want the same type of charging port, for example, you want to keep one charger at your home and one charger at your workplace, then you might need to have the same charging ports on both of your batteries. If you have a request of that type, it's suggested that please send us a picture of the charging port on your existing battery and then request that, hey, can I get the same charging port on my second battery? It'll help you because then you've got 2 chargers that you can use on either of the batteries. So that helps a lot.
Those are super handy to have for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so we do have a bunch of types of batteries, and we've got 3 examples here in front of us.
Yeah.
So Eddie, can you tell me the difference between this one, and this one?
Absolutely. I'll start with this one. This is the previous Dorado style battery. This was used for many years. This is still being used on many of our bikes. But slowly, as we are moving to the duo bikes that come with 2 batteries on them, these batteries don't work on the duo bikes. So this is only exclusively on non-duo bikes for now, and some other bikes. So essentially these are the Dorado style, very standard case batteries, 18 inches long, and they come with these standard 2-pin discharge port, and there's another set on there. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. It's an important thing to discuss on that. I'd like to mention a point here. They come with a LED indicator on here. Now a lot of customers, when they get back to us, they feel that this gives them a charge level, which is not exactly correct. The purpose of this indicator is to test the battery when they're on the shelves and when they are being charged, just to see if they have charged up enough. They do give you a little bit of indication about the charge levels, but they're not exact. For example, if you have 2 LEDs out of 4, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's 50% charged or you have 50% charge value of them. because that's not exactly what it's working like. So to answer that question, always follow the charge indicator on your display that's on your bike. That's the point that you should be looking at. If you rely on this, it's not going to help you, because that's the place that tells you how much charge exactly you're going to get out of your battery. So that's number 2. Okay, so this was the battery that we used to have, and now we have these kind of batteries. So I'll talk about this first. These are the hidden down tube primary batteries on our Duo bikes. Now, they come with standard 1-pin charging port on them, and they come with a different style of discharging port on them. Some bikes will show a different style of discharge port, but the important point is this again. If you see, on these kind of batteries, there is just one button and just one LED, and this LED is a multicolored LED. It says red, green, and blue. So blue essentially means your battery is charged and good to go. Green means it's like somewhere in mid-level charge and it's good to go, but it's advisable to charge it up. As soon as you see the red light, it doesn't show red right now, but if it does show you red light, then it means that you need to charge your battery right now, as soon as possible. These are the they come with a locking mechanism on the bike. Be advised, when you are unlocking these batteries from the bike, if you're not operating that correctly, they might fall down and hit the ground, or maybe hit your fender on your bike. So be advised to unlock them properly, because there is a procedure. We have that demonstration on our support page. Coming back to this style, these are now called as the range extenders. They usually come with standard 1-pin charge port, and there's a discharge port at the bottom. A lot of questions are being asked about these batteries. Number 1, how does this indicator work? It shows me red and green. Well, it's a level indicator kind of thing. So as your battery will discharge, these LEDs would turn off one by one, and in the end you'll be left with only the red LED, which means that charge it up now. Sometimes the battery will be cut out by the BMS and you won't see the output, but you would still see the red light, which essentially again means that charge your battery right now. Another question that's being asked frequently on these kind of batteries: what is this on-off switch? What do I do? Some customers have had a hard time to understand how to operate these ones. Well, the purpose of this on-off switch is to safeguard your connectors, because you see on these style of batteries, the connectors are a bit exposed as compared to the other kind of batteries. So you need to turn off the switch when you're installing the battery on the bike, or you're removing the battery out of the bike. You need to keep it off. This will safeguard your contacts and make sure that you don't have any shorts in case you're not operating it correctly. So turn it off when you're removing the battery from the bike, or you're trying to reinstall it back on the bike. The other point was, do I keep it on or off when charging? It really doesn't matter, but it's advisable that you keep it off, because usually these batteries are charged off the bike, and then you don't need the contacts to have a charge level on there when they're probably resting on some surface that's maybe can have some contaminants on them. So we don't want these charge outputs to operate. So advisable to keep them off when you're charging, but it doesn't matter, you can leave them on. It's okay, it'll work. It'll charge the battery. Sorry. All right, so those were the kind of batteries. Shannon, what else have you got?
Alex has sent me a couple questions here that we've gotten from viewers. One of them, just circling back to plugging in our charger, wall, and then battery. What about unplugging it?
Yeah, to unplug it, you have to pull the charging wire of the charger from the battery, and then you can remove it out. That'll work.
All right, so out of the battery first when we're unplugging it.
Yeah.
As well, thoughts on charging it from an RV by a pure sine wave inverter providing 110 volt AC current. I know what most of those words mean. I'm glad Eddie is here to help with those.
Well, I was expecting this question. This has been asked a lot of times. Yes. Uh, we usually need 250 watts of power from the inverter to charge these batteries, but we advise to double it up. So the total output that should be available for the charger should be 500 watts. Now, the inverters, they come with different standards and different qualities actually. The pure sine wave ones are the best ones, and those are the only ones that work on these devices. But we have seen some of them not working properly. However, the pure sine wave, the best quality branded ones do work fine. But make sure that the total output that's available on the charger for you should be 500 watts or more than that. So that will work.
Excellent. All right, thank you. Okay, so we were talking about our duo bikes and how they use these guys and how these attach. So let's actually talk about the attachment for our range extended batteries, and I believe we've got one right here.
Alrighty, I will show you something more. So the range extender batteries, they sit on a plate that's called as the battery mount base plate. Now, all of these base plates have a different connector on this side, I mean the different plug, depending on what kind of duo bike you're buying and in what batch you are. But essentially, we have got something like 3 types of plugs. So here they are. These are 3 different types of plugs. The key thing to note is every plug has a key on it, all right? So if you have got one of these plugs, they do look like they can go from any side, but they do not. So please be careful when you get them for the first time. And if you're doing a first time installation, be careful that you see where is your key and you then match it with the socket that's on your bike. Because if you try to put it the other way, then essentially you're switching the positive and negative, and chances of damaging something on your bike is like super high. So please be careful. Like, we have got these 3 kind of connectors or plugs, and be sure that when you're doing the first installation, you're doing it properly. You can leave them on your bike forever. It's advisable that you leave it on your bike, because this is once connected on your bike, then the only thing that you need to remove from your bike is the battery and not this plug. So I hope that
Great. And this one I recognize from my own Ultra Duo.
Yeah.
And you got to make sure you put it on the right way. We have seen it happen where one got put on the wrong way, and some smoke came out of that bike. So definitely make sure you are paying attention. It should go on fairly easily. If you're having to really force it, it's probably going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
So just keep an eye on that for sure.
Alright, I think I'll bring up one point that I remember people asking a lot of times. Can I charge my battery on the bike? Yes or no? And how to do it, and what are the pros and cons, and what are the precautions? And that's an important question. Number 1, yes, you can charge your battery on the bike. Usually every bike comes with a charging port on it, and you can use that charging port to charge your battery on the bike. However, it's advisable, number 1, your charging wire should not be hanging just by the charging port. So for example, I will give a demonstration of this. Assuming that we have a bike here and you want to charge using this charger, and you connect this to the bike, but you leave this hanging. If you do that, then you're putting too much pressure on this pin, and this pin will put too much pressure on the charge port that's inside the battery. So do not leave the charger hanging just by this pin alone. Use a stool, something that can hold your charger box next to it so that it doesn't get stretched. That's number 1. Number 2, you can charge your battery on the bike. However, it's advisable that you charge it in a cool place, and that's safe to operate. For example, there shouldn't be kids, there shouldn't be your pets or anything around. Things can happen. Make sure that it's a safe zone and nobody else no other person has access to it. Just like, keep it safe. Thirdly, you can, if you are charging your battery on your bike, try I won't say try, don't even try to turn on your bike, because that would put too much pressure on your cells and your BMS and your charger and the whole electronics. If you plan to operate your bike, remove the charger first. If you just want to do a test, you can at the max, you can turn on the display, but never ever turn on any other thing on your bike, or try to operate throttle or any other electronics on your bike with the charger connected on the bike and the battery being charged. So those are two important precautions to take when you're charging your battery on the bike. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, those sound like a recipe for a bad time, leaving that all on there. And if we're wanting to prolong the life of our batteries, let's make sure we're taking care of them.
Yeah.
Speaking of prolonging life, I know here in Saskatchewan we have roughly, sometimes it feels like 8 months of winter, at least 6. It gets really cold, and I don't always want to ride my bike throughout the winter.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to store it. How should I store my batteries? Can I just leave them on my bike in my garage that's unheated for the whole time and it'll be fine in spring? Or is there something else I could be doing?
Yeah. Well, a good question, and this has been asked before as well. We strictly advise that if you're planning to store your batteries unused, then better to keep them at a room temperature place, like the place that has room temperature. Never leave your batteries for prolonged period of times in an unheated garage or in winters. Especially, we have this whole list of temperature ratings on our website. Try to keep your batteries in a place that is like cool, dark, free of moisture. If you don't plan to use your batteries, it's fine, but bring it in, keep it in a room temperature, and make sure that you charge them at least once a month, so that batteries are healthy. These cells, if they discharge once on their own, they have super high chance of losing all their capacity, or at least some of the packs will lose their capacity within themselves. So for example, these are the insides of the one of the batteries, and you can see they come in these groups, and even if 2 of these cells lose their charge value, then the whole pack loses its entire charge value, and it's super difficult to recover that. So please make sure that you charge them at least once a month. I have seen a question where a person was going on a vacation and they were like, I'm gonna be away for like 4 months, what do I do? I would suggest that you can probably give the battery and the charger to one of your friends or relatives and ask them to, please charge it once in a month. That's fine, and that should be good. That will really, really save your battery.
Speaking of saving our batteries and these cells, how tough are these cells? If I dropped my battery, can I damage them?
You can, but usually they don't. So if you drop it, it'll all depend on the kind of drop that you're having on it. But yeah, they're pretty decently packed and safe to be operated upon. But yeah, please try not to drop them. They are safe. The casing itself, so for example, these casings are full metal casings, so in case anything goes wrong, it stays inside. But yeah, in our experience, nothing substantially bad has ever happened on any of our batteries, so they're like pretty rough, but yeah, take precautions every
Yeah,
time.
they're meant to take your bike riding, so if you're going off-road and all terrain, you definitely don't want a little tender little battery casing. Something a little more sturdy for sure. Excellent. All right, so I want to order a bike. I have the option of getting a 52 volt battery or a 48 volt battery. I want a stunner.
Yeah.
Why should I get one or the other? What's the voltage about?
All right, good question. The thing is that the voltage and current, they combine together to give you power output. All right. So if you have more current, then you get more power. If you have more voltage, then you get more power as well. So essentially, some of these battery varieties or variants, they come with a 52 volt standard nominal voltage setup, which essentially means that once they are fully charged, they would be charged up to 58 volts. That's like super high voltage on a battery pack, which would mean that in the end you'll have the max power on your bike. So your motor will have the absolute maximum charge value available to operate, and the user would experience, in terms of 48 volts, they would experience a pretty quick torque on their bikes when they're starting from zero. But the thing is, this is only once the batteries are fully charged, because the 58 volt battery would eventually discharge to some values, and that would become equal to 48 volts battery that we usually operate. So the noticeable comparison or difference would be only at the top charge values on a 58 volt battery as compared to a 48 volt battery. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. Excellent. So it sounds like it would help me a lot on hills and stuff, especially in that top charge point. But
Yeah.
will it make me go faster or make my bike go further?
No, your bike won't go further. The distance is calculated by the amp hours that is on your battery. So the more amp hours that you have on your battery, the more distance you can cover. Amp hours are like your capacity of your gas tank on your car. So for example, how many gallons or how many liters that you can put in there. That defines the total capacity of your tank, and that's how amp hours work. Like, the more amp hours that you have, the more capacity you have to store charge and then to go further. But in comparison to 48 and 52 volt, the only difference that you'll notice is the acceleration in the start at the top charge levels. So for example, if you're doing a quarter-mile race with your buddy who's on a 48 volts, the chances of you winning the race is high if you're on 52.
Nice. I'll keep that in mind. I hope none of my friends or family are watching so that we can place some bets on some races this summer.
Yeah.
So speaking of range, I've noticed on the website when I am searching to choose battery, we say estimated range. So how far I can go. And so some of them will say like an estimated 50-mile range. Why is it estimated? How can I make sure I'm getting that range? What's the best way to get the furthest distance out of any battery that I choose?
Yeah. So number one, this is like the number one question being asked, like how do I get the maximum juice out of my battery and how can I travel further and further? Well, the thing is that a lot depends on the rider and the habits and the surrounding variables. Now, the reason why we mention it as an estimate is because there's no absolute way of defining the range in e-bikes, because there are so many variables attached to every rider, and in fact every rider with the same bike can have different results because there are certain variables attached to the environment, for example, the terrain that you're riding on. So we'll come to that later, but yeah, as a user, first thing to do is charge your battery, top it up as much as possible, as soon as possible. Make sure that your battery is topped up most of the time, number one. Number two, when you start your bike, before you even start your bike ride, make sure that everything is nice on your bike, everything is operating smoothly, your chain should be operating correctly, your gears should be operating correctly. You should have proper tire pressure on your bike. Depending on the rider's weight, your tire pressure should be adjusted, and that's super important because that would significantly define the range that you're going to get on your bike. If you have less pressure than needed, then that means that you have more drag on your bike, and that would take out more juice than needed from your per ride condition. Thirdly, it's super important that you operate your gears properly. All of our bikes come with gears and shifters, so you have to shift your gears. Essentially, think of it as a stick shifting car, so that you have a stick shifter and you have to start on gear 1. You can start on gear 4, the 6th or 7th gear, but then you're putting more pressure, more drag on your system, and eventually you're drawing more current from the battery, which would drain the battery sooner than later. So shift your gears, make sure the tire pressure is proper, make sure that you are starting from 0, and also pass levels are important. All of our bikes come with pass levels. So start from pass 0 or 1 as you have a roll, then slowly switch over to higher pass levels. But it's important to know that as you use more and more pass levels, you're drawing more and more current from the battery. So if you are operating the bike with higher pass levels, then you are consuming more voltage and more current from the battery, which would like drain your battery sooner. So make sure that you take care of these conditions and you will have excellent results on these batteries.
I've definitely noticed that myself on my commutes to work. If I pop my bike into pass 3 or 4 and just hit that throttle to cruise because it's 8 in the morning and I'm still a little tired, I definitely use more battery on that part of my journey than I would on the ride home when I'm pedaling and in pass 1 and not quite using as much. So
Yeah.
that is definitely a good tip to have. I've noticed that all of our batteries here have keys and they can lock on.
Yeah.
I lost my keys.
Oh, okay.
Can I just get a new set, or how does that work?
Well, that's a tough luck actually, because I will show you. So, for example, usually we use these kind of keys as more or less similar kind. The thing is that all these locks are unique to our batteries, and which means that if you lose them, then you would need to change the lock on them. But the bad thing is, on some of these batteries, the locks are integrated onto the battery case itself. So you cannot just change the lock, you'll end up changing a lot, maybe even the battery in some cases. So make sure, and this is a personal advice from me, I've seen this happen so many times. As soon as you get your keys, first of all, separate them out. Make sure that you keep one in your safe or locker, whatever. But also try to make some duplicates out of this as soon as you get them. Maybe make 4 or 5, give one to your mom or dad, whatever. Keep it somewhere that you cannot reach to lose them. So keep it safe. But yeah, absolutely important to make few more copies of these, because these are hard to come by. And if you lose them, then you might need to change your battery or the battery casing. However, the old Dorado style battery locks, they came fitted on the bike frame. So for example, these ones, and these ones are available with us to purchase. But yeah, you need to buy this whole set. But yeah, again, you'll need to do some work on your wiring because the wires are soldered at the back. But yeah, there's a way out of that. However, in certain other cases like these ones, please don't lose them. Yeah, it's super tricky.
Good to know. Let's keep those safe. And I didn't actually lose my keys, I promise. I put one set away because I've seen it happen. All right, so I've had my battery for a little while, and I feel like maybe I'm just not quite getting the range, or my charge feels like it's dropping really quickly, and I would like some help with troubleshooting my battery. What do I need to know before I reach out to support, or what can I do to help get the best support for my battery?
All right. Before I answer that question, I would like our viewers and all of our customers to know that our support page, so if you go on our website and click on support and you find the resource center on the options and click on that, you will have our support page. Now the support page has this search bar, and we have got lots and lots of support articles there. Like if you can search for your questions, you will find most of the answers there. Important point to note that 90% of the questions have already been put on that support center. So if you can quickly look it up, so for example, you might be camping, hunting, and you can just quickly take out your cell phone, look on the support page, you might find most of the questions being answered there. But yeah, you need to have this device. This is the multimeter. This is like the super important tool that is a must-have tool in your kit if you're buying an e-bike, because your e-bike has an E on it, and only way to find the E is this. So only way to find the electricity or the electronic part is to actually have this tool. This is like having a jack or car jack in your trunk always. All right, so this is so important. You don't drive your car without a jack inside, and you don't go outdoors without it, right? So essentially, if you have a multimeter in your hands, then you can check the voltage of your battery. That's the number one and the simplest step to do. A lot of times customers come to us saying that my bike doesn't turn on. The first question that we ask them always is, have you tested the output of the battery? Because if your battery isn't giving you the output, then of course your bike won't turn on. So the only true way to test that is to have this device. This is like the number one tool in your kit that you should have always if you're buying an e-bike. So always have this. Imagining that you are outside and you don't know what's happening, so this is the tool that you'd use. So for example, if you have this battery, then you would see that there's a marking that shows a positive and a negative. You use your prongs, test the voltage on here and see if the voltage is coming out on the multimeter. Now, to cover that point, we also have on our support center a page that shows how much should be the voltage on your battery. So for example, because of all these types of batteries, how do I know what kind of voltage should be there? If you'll go to our support page, identify your battery, we have an article that shows how to test your battery, and that exactly tells you if you have this kind of battery, then you need to have this kind of voltage. So please make sure that you have this tool and then test your battery for output.
And where can I get this tool? Is it expensive? Is it hard to find?
Absolutely no. Usually you find them in most of the stores. You can buy it for like 10 bucks, 15. Buy it online, buy it from someplace. But yeah, make sure that you buy this and have it in your toolkit.
Excellent. I will make sure I pick one up.
Yeah.
I need to add that to my own toolkit. Can you take, another question here from our viewers that Alex has just shared with me, can you take out the bike for a first ride before charging it?
It depends. So for example, most of our batteries are shipped with little to no charge levels on them. This is a regulatory requirement from the flight safety and around the world authorities, because they don't want charge levels on the batteries. So most of the batteries that are shipped, and I would say most, and I would say not all of them, because the way they are stored depends. So for example, when we get the batteries in our warehouse at our headquarters, we charge them up, some of them, because they're needed to be installed on the bike, and the bike needs to be tested on it or with it. So depending on the logistics, you might get a bike with a battery that's not charged. So it's always advisable to connect your battery. So if, for example, you got your bike, you got your battery just now, you're just excited to go out, fine. Take 20 minutes, charge your battery for at least 20 minutes before you do your first ride. That'll save you a lot of trouble, trust me.
What if my battery dies while I'm out riding? Can I still ride my bike?
Absolutely. Your bike does not stop if your battery dies, because if without the battery, your bike would behave just a normal bike in that case. You would just not have the E factor on that bike. But yeah, you can still ride your bike back to your location or wherever you want to go.
I actually already knew that because I did that last summer commuting. I did not charge my bike and I rode it home and it died halfway. And this was with a Juggernaut HD Duo, so one of our original Duo models, which is not a light bike. And my brother actually followed me home in his work truck for 3 blocks, all uphill, laughing at me while I pedaled. He thought that was pretty great. So yes, you can ride them without charge, but they are much more fun if we charge our batteries first and go for a rip.
Totally.
So was there anything else that we haven't covered yet that you want to share with the class?
Yeah, a couple of things. So for example, this point that my battery just died, some of the batteries, for example, these kind of batteries, the 21 and 52, the 4821 and the 5217, these Dorado style of batteries, they come with a fuse. This is the fuse, and this is a normal fuse that's used on your cars these days. So you need a 20 amp minimum and a 30 amp maximum fuse. So along with the multimeter, if you have one of these or these kind of batteries, buy a few of these fuses and just keep it in your toolkit or traveling bag. Because we have seen cases where customers have a blown fuse on their batteries. So these two kind of batteries, they usually come with these kind of fuse. And where are these fuses located? That's the question. Usually the fuses are on this side where you have the charge indicator. So it would be on this side, it's held by 4 screws. You open it up, you'll find the fuse. Now, not all batteries came with fuses, but most of them did come with fuses. The same thing goes with this one. If the fuse is on this side, we have a support article on our website. Again, if you go on the support page, support center, you will find this article that shows you how to open your battery cap to access the fuse, and this is the fuse that can be easily replaced. So if you have a dead battery, test with a multimeter if it's giving the output. If not, if you have one of these batteries, locate this fuse, and if it doesn't have it, then perhaps your BMS needs a reset. We have a YouTube video on how to reset your BMS, but not every batteries are compatible with those options. So if you enter into those territories, then please contact us on support@biktrix.com, and we would love to assist you with that. Now, I would like to bring in a few more things. A lot of customers, they complain that I'm not getting good charge or like the range. I'm riding my bike, but it just whatever, it's not satisfactory. That can happen due to many reasons and due to various factors. Now, essentially, we usually try to address that problem with certain questions. The questions are designed to find where the flaw is. So, for example, the flaw could be in something more different than the battery itself. All right. So, for example, if you are not pedaling properly, or if your terrain has got a lot of incline on it, or a lot of ups and downs and uphills and downhills, then you will be consuming more power from your bike without thinking about it. So usually we ask for a bike ride test, and we have an article again, how to record your ride using Gmaps or Google Maps. And there's another application like Relive which can be used, and both of these applications work very wonderfully. And because they also show you the terrain, the kind of terrain that you use and the acceleration that you use. This is important for us because if we take the battery back, send you another one, if it still doesn't solve the problem, then you won't solve the problem. So we need to know what's happening. So please, when we ask you for those questions, please let us know the answers so that we can help you better. I would also like to show you something from in-house. When the batteries come back to us, we run a capacity test. I don't know if you can see that or not, but here's a graph of the capacity test. This is what is being done in-house. Now you would see that this capacity test also gives you the output results. For example, this was a 17 amp hour battery, and it has almost 17 amps of charge on it, which means it's good. Because this capacity test tells us if the battery has proper capacity inside, if the cells are aged or not, if they're healthy, if they're still useful or not. A lot of times customers ask us this question, I gave you the battery, but how do you know that the battery is good? Well, this is the answer. We usually ship all our test results with the batteries, but in case you didn't get it, we have them saved on our computer here. We can share the PDF file with you. But yeah, it's important to know that batteries are being tested for capacity when they come back to us, so there is no assumption left. Another point that I would like to mention regarding the customers who complain about range, for people who are having these kind of Dorado style of batteries, and then they have these kind of locks, a lot of times these contacts have carbon on it. Over a period of time, when you're removing and connecting the battery again and again, you will see there will be some carbon built up on these ports, on the battery side as well as on these sides. No matter what kind of battery port you have, but carbon buildup is normal in many cases. You can use an electrical contact cleaner. Please don't use WD-40, okay? WD-40 is not meant for electrical contacts. Unless you are using the WD-40 for electrical contacts, that's fine. But yeah, go out and buy IP-based electrical contact cleaner and clean your contacts. That'll make sure that your contacts are good and your charge flow is good. Another thing to check on your bike, if you have these kind of things or locks on your bike and you're struggling with range, or you're struggling with an issue that says your battery or your bike dies abruptly. Sometimes the connections behind it are like, broken, or like they are like not strong enough. So open this lock, and if you just see these ports, you should be able to find out if your connections are good or not. If they are good, then your bike should turn on. If not, then make sure that it's made good.
So those are pretty rare occasions, though, too, that we would see.
Yes, those are pretty rare. But since we're talking about people going to some remote places and then they're having issues, in case you're one of them, you might need to test or check one of these. But yeah, it happens very occasionally, very rare. But yeah, in case you don't have access to support right away, or you are having this issue over the weekend where you need immediate, some ideas to have, then this is one of them.
For sure. I've got a couple more questions
Sure.
from viewers. One, why can't we monitor each cell group voltage on the DPC18 display? So that's the display that comes on the Ultra Duo and bikes with the Ultra motor. So why can't we monitor each cell group's voltage?
All right, so the DPC18 display is essentially a display that's not used just on our bikes, but used on many other bikes. All right, now it will have certain functionalities available on the display itself, but those functions are not available on our bikes. Now, some of the bikes that are on the e-bike industry, they come with what's called as the battery sensing technology. And that essentially requires a whole lot of electronic setup on the bike to establish that. We don't use that setup because for multiple reasons. Number one being that it increases the entire cost of the product itself. Secondly, it adds another layer of complication on the operability of your bike. So we don't use that feature, and that's why that feature is not available on our bikes and on this display. However, even if that's being used, that is not really helpful for the end user, because you might be able to monitor it, but you won't be able to control it, because in the end, you're not the person who's controlling it. So essentially, it seems that that tech is used mostly by the R&D people, where they are building technology and then they want to observe certain cell packs. So that's not a very user-friendly option to go with, and that's why we never thought about putting that as an option on our product.
All right, and speaking of my display, I know on the DPC18 you do have the option of setting your battery monitor to voltage or percentage.
Yep.
Which do you recommend?
I would highly recommend that you use the voltage option. First of all, the percentages are calibrated based on different values and different batteries. And again, as I said, the DPC18 is used on different other batteries and bikes. The calibration levels are designed to be generic at the most. So your percentage values never give you the accurate idea about your battery. For example, 93% can mean X volts plus X 0.5 volts even. So, but if you have set it on volts, then you get a pretty good idea about the volt level on your battery, and then you can decide on how much power is left on your battery and bike to operate. So please go with voltage level, it gives you the best result.
And we do have those manuals and instructions on how to make those adjustments on your display on our resource center.
Yep.
So one last one here, on a 48 volt battery, what would you say is the turnaround point on a ride? Like how much should you drain your battery before you should kind of turn around and head home so you don't run out?
All right, good question. So that's why it's essential that you set your display to read voltage instead of percentage. In case you have an old gen, the black and white display that doesn't show you the voltage but shows you the bars or the percentage, I usually personally advise all of our customers to have a test run first before deciding what is the cutoff point. So for example, you do a test run of your ride, and then towards the end of it, you see you have a last bar or the last value on your battery indicator. Then you be closer to your home or your location where you're going to get back. So in case your battery dies, then you can pedal back home. So the idea is to essentially see what voltage level and what kilometer level you're getting the range, and then decide from there.
Yeah, it's not a hard and fast number. It's going to depend on, like
Yes.
Eddie said earlier, your terrain, the rider, how far you're going. So
Absolutely.
just get to know your bike and see what you can do with it. And you can do a lot. These things are super fun.
Totally.
All right. So we've done a super sweet deep dive into the care and maintenance of your battery here today and tried to cover as many bases as possible. And I just want to thank Eddie for joining us and helping us and sharing his expertise. Like you mentioned earlier, we do have a lot of this already up on the support resource center. You can find that through our website. If you have any questions, absolutely let us know. We're here to help. And thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.